Is Leung. I am the program manager with the Innovate Bio grant at Austin Community College in Austin, Texas. Innovate Bio is a national advanced technological education center focused on biotechnology. Both Innovate Bio and this series of talks are funded by the National Science Foundation. We encourage and support ideas and innovations you have for educating biotechnicians and encourage you to apply for ATE funding. Please feel free to reach out to us. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping announcements. The two presentations will be back to back, followed by a Q&A. Please feel free to use the chat box to jot down questions. And lastly, additional information on these ATE projects, as well as future ATE project talks, can be found on the Innovate Bio website, which we will put on the chat, in the chat. And actually, we only have one more ATE project talk after this one. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce our first project talk speakers, Dr. Karen Leung and Julie Griffin. Their presentation is titled Increasing Student Retention and Recruitment Through Alumni Programs, Speed Networking, and Industry and Engagement. In this session, you'll learn how colleges from across the United States are implementing this strategy in their programs, the impacts, and what tools are available for you to host your own speed networking event. Welcome.
Thank you, Dion. So I'm going to get it started. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Karen Leung from City College of San Francisco. Julie's going to join me in this presentation from Johnston Community College. To make it short, our short name for our project is our Alumni and Industry Engagement Project, and we're really going to focus on talking about speed networking today. We're also in collaboration with Austin Community College, so Cassandra, who's here as well. And so let me just get into it. So we came together to form this collaboration between these three community colleges from across the United States to really see if we could increase student interactions with alumni and industry professionals to increase recruitment and retention. So with the idea that we all have students in our programs who are learning biotechnology, but often many of those students don't overlap with industry, and even sometimes don't even overlap in interactions with their alumni who are now in industry. And so we wanted to see if we could increase this overlap and hopefully increase recruitment and retention. The idea here was really to do two predominant things, although we're doing some side things as well, but looking at speed networking, which we're really going to focus on today, but also alumni success stories. So if we could engage our students more regularly with understanding the pathways they're going to and the successes that we already know are coming out of our programs, this would increase their sense of belonging and sense of science identity and self-efficacy and just general biotech career awareness, which we would hope that would increase recruitment, retention, and placement. On top of that, what's really nice about potentially building these types of pieces into a program is that then you are building your pipeline for more alumni going forward. So as your students sort of engage with alumni, your previous alumni in industry, they are recognizing the benefits of doing that and hopefully will come back once they have jobs in industry. And so you're sort of just growing that pipeline as well. And so the idea was to increase all of these bubbles and then sort of overlap them as much as possible, industry, alumni, and our students. So again, just because it's a short presentation, we're going to really focus on the virtual speed networking, which is where we spent the majority of our time in the first about year and a half of our project. We're in our second year right now. And so just for a very brief history, myself and Dr. Goli Afshar at City College of San Francisco started doing speed networking for our biotech program there back in 2018. You can see a picture on the bottom left side of one of those events. The idea was really to bring industry professionals together with our students for short increments to discuss education and career goals and their experiences, right? Like really kind of casual, relaxed networking to help our students build a network within biotech, to learn about the field and develop confidence really talking to professionals, which could often be a barrier we saw in our program. What was beautiful about these events as soon as we started them was it was obvious that this was so much more fun and relaxed than a lot of the other events that we held because there was no expectation of preparation, right? These are just individuals having conversations and short ones. It allowed students to directly ask career exploration questions to the professionals in those jobs, in a variety of different jobs, so they could get their specific questions answered. It really helped to build student confidence and their networks. It really also helped us build and maintain our network with our industry professionals and our alumni, because it, again, created this event where multiple individuals from industry and our alumni could come back to the program, again, with basically no preparation. They could just come, have a nice, fun, relaxed event, and still get connected again with us and our students. And it really helped students prepare for networking and for interviews. Because again, I'm sure many of you have seen this before as well. This is really a barrier, not just for our students, but for many of us, right? It's hard to go talk to somebody new. And this would often break that barrier, or at least it help reduce it. In 2020, as with basically everything, we went virtual and started utilizing Zoom instead of a physical room to have these events. And this actually ended up working out really well. You could use breakout rooms to do these events. And then we would rotate an industry professional between the breakout rooms rather than like having people physically move throughout a classroom. Within 1 to 2 hours of these, a 1 to 2 hour event, you could basically have students connect directly with 3 to 6 industry professionals over the time course of that event. It also reduced a lot of effort because we didn't have to find rooms. We didn't, to dismay of many people, we didn't have food, but we didn't have to deal with parking or figuring out signage of how people could get places, right? And actually, we have had alumni move out of the area. We've had industry professionals move to the other side of the country, and they still wanted to engage, and this allowed them to do that as well. So I'm going to transition now and have Julie take it away and tell about the benefits of this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Griffin from Johnston Community College, just outside of Raleigh in North Carolina, Johnston County. I am glad to be here today and appreciate the chance to talk a little bit about the benefits of the program, as well as some of the data that we have, some of the highlights, and then our guidelines that we've created as a team. As you can imagine, and piggybacking on what Karen shared, new word. Some of the benefits for the students really are an increased awareness of careers and opportunities. Also, getting through some of the nerves of the interviews. While this is a less pressure event, students are preparing, elevator pitches and introducing themselves to industry, individuals in industry working. They're working through some of that. They're also learning a little bit more about career paths and possible opportunities in industry. So there are many benefits for students as well as for biotech programs. This really has been a way for us to keep our industry partners engaged, our alumni engaged. And as Karen mentioned, some of our alumni have been on both sides of speed networking as student attendees as well as volunteer participants. And then it's a really a lower investment on the time wise for our volunteers and for that engagement with the biotech program. In our alumni volunteers, as well as our industry volunteers at Johnston Community College, we have had primarily non-alumni volunteers. So we are seeing more alumni volunteers coming in as students that have participated. But when we host a speed networking event, we really open it up to any of our industry volunteers as well as our alumni. And so these two columns for us are a little more together. Individuals who participate on the volunteer side are getting an opportunity to meet our students, to share their pathways with our students, to make connections that could potentially turn into employment opportunities. We've had, several students have connected with somebody that was in a hiring position or somebody connected to somebody in a hiring position. And while it's not a hiring event, those connections are established and individuals have seen opportunities from this event. Next slide. All right, so for the first year of our project, we hosted cumulatively between Austin Community College, City College of San Francisco, and Johnston Community College, 11 virtual speed networking events at the three different colleges. This resulted in 100 plus students and 70 plus biotech industry professionals from 30 different organizations and 600 plus direct interactions between community colleges and alumni and industry professionals, just in the first year of our grant. All right, so for the student, we're going to talk a little bit about some data on this slide and the next slide. 100% of students say that this type of event provided them with a better understanding of the variety of jobs in biotech. Also really want to draw your attention to the 86%, and that 86% of the students said from our survey data that this type of event, this virtual speed networking event that they attended, influenced their desire to take future bioscience, biotech courses at their local community college. And just a few quotes at the bottom. One I'm just going to read. One of the quotes that we felt was important to share was that an individual said they met with receptive, knowledgeable individuals who shared with them their knowledge and journeys, and they felt more confident about their own journey and decisions they have to make in their future. All right, additional evaluation highlights and data. 100% of the students felt that this type of event was either excellent or good. And 100% of industry and alumni attendees on the volunteer side also felt that this event was either excellent or good. Now, some of the student themes, some of the students really felt like they gained some confidence and knowledge concerning searching for, applying to, and working in the biotech field. Also, there was a praise for the diverse, knowledgeable, and friendly industry professionals, connection to industry professionals, and that the events are well-organized and executed events. The industry themes from our survey responses include praise for the engaged and well-prepared students, well-organized events, and appreciation for an enjoyable experience that allow participants to share their knowledge and advice and give back to programs. Finally, I want to draw your attention to some data that we've been collecting over this first year of the grant. We really wanted to look at if students felt it was important to meet with alumni. And in fact, what we hear that 87% of students shared that it was important to meet with alum, and 94% of those who identified as historically excluded from the science careers felt like it was important. Even more so than meeting somebody with a similar background. So we felt like this was great data to have and to support our efforts in the future. Next slide. All right, as mentioned, we have been putting together guidelines over the past few months. Some of you have reviewed our guidelines for us. That was part of our grant as well. One of our objectives was to create a guideline that we could share with other community colleges or other individuals of interest. We do have a website. It's on our website, bit.ly/ATE alumni. You'll click on resources, and then you can click on the speed networking guidelines, and you will find our guidelines. One of the most important aspects we feel in this guidelines is the timeline. It really kind of puts that timeline of the event, if you're going to host your own event, out 4 to 6 weeks. And so you can kind of look at the different steps that you'll want to take in moving towards that event. Thanks, Karen. And Karen's going to take it over and share a little bit more about our support and how we can help you if you're interested in hosting your own event.
Yeah, so this is our super fast way of going through like what we thought. We think these are really great events. We would love to see more networking happening for community college students nationwide. And so this is our attempt to put together a set of guidelines to make that easy for people to do. But we recognize that reading a document and doing that is not necessarily what everybody's cup of tea. And sometimes you would like a helping hand. And that's what we would like to provide. We would like to find some additional programs that would like to try out these guidelines and help us test them. And in doing that, what we would be willing to do for you in exchange is give you some of our team's time and support to implement those guidelines and set up an event, a virtual speed networking event, and even do the hosting and including management of the Zoom breakout rooms. So if that's not kind of like your thing, or not yet, that's something we can come in and help you do or do for you, just to try it out, see how it goes. And then in exchange, we basically get survey data, fully anonymous, from your participants to let us know if this is still an event that's effective in your program, and get your feedback on our guidelines and on hosting an event in general, so that we can get a better understanding of how we can refine and update these guidelines, because really what we want to create is an atmosphere where this is something, or something like this, can continue to be done for programs throughout the nation as much as possible. I mean, at this point, we realize this is an Innovate Bio talk. We are really interested in biotechnology programs, but this is obviously something that can be done for any type of program. And just recognizing how important it is for our students to get networked, because that's 85% of how people find jobs. And it is also a great way to, again, all the benefits that Julie talked about, right? It really can help you build your industry engagement and alumni engagement as well. Before we move forward, I'm going to do it super quick. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the rest of our grant because we just focused on speed networking and a couple of other things that we're doing, just in case you're interested and you want to contact us about those. So the other piece of our grant besides the speed networking is really to look at alumni networks. Part of how we're doing this and thinking about building them and maintaining them is to capture alumni stories. We're really excited to say that we're going to be starting our own podcast on alumni stories, of biotech alumni stories. That's going to be called Biotech Beat. It's basically very similar to Talking Technicians, and Peter Kazarnoff, who's doing that set of podcasts for the MinTech Center, is helping us build our Biotech Beat storyline. We're hoping to have our storyline podcast. We are working, he is currently really helping us work on 10 episodes that should be dropping in the next 6 months of alumni, biotech alumni from community colleges who are now working in the industry. And then on top of that, we've collaborated with Jeff Shinsky at Foothill College, who has built Scientist Spotlights, which really highlights diverse stories of diverse scientists. And we recognize that our students, our alumni, are those diverse scientists, and we want those stories to be on the Scientist Spotlights. So we've started to build those as well. And then to engage alumni further, we have them come to the virtual speed networking events as volunteers. Actually, this Friday, we will be testing out for the first time, having them be participants with industry professionals to help continue to build their networks as well, give them additional professional development opportunities, as well as connecting them with LinkedIn and looking at the best practices for doing that. We also have built an alumni advisory board from our alumni to really kind of inform us on what types of things would help keep alumni engaged in our programs. And then we're also providing other options for professional development, including workplace navigation training, which I talked about last Friday on a different grant that I'm working on with City College and the University of California, San Francisco. And then also providing them opportunities for resume reviews and hopefully in the future mock interviews. So with that, this is us. Hope we get some questions after the second presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Karen and Julie. At this time, I would like to introduce our second Project Talk speakers, Louise Petruzzella, Amanda Rosenzweig, Haley Orndor. Their presentation is titled Advancing Progress in Industrial Biomanufacturing to Accelerate Workforce Readiness. This webinar will cover the modules that will be developed, the topics they will cover, and opportunities to participate in the project. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dion. My name is Louise Petruzzella. I'm with Biomade, and I serve as the Senior Project Manager for the organization. I want to say thank you to Innovate Bio for coordinating the opportunity to share a little bit about our project. And I want to add before we begin that I had the chance to participate in the speed networking event in October in DC last year with the Karen's project. And it was a wonderful experience talking with the students. So kudos to that project and what they're doing there. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We do have a project here. Biomade is an institute, one of 17 Manufacturing USA institutes, and we're focused on bioindustrial manufacturing. Some of you on the line may have worked with BioFab USA or Nimble, perhaps. Biomade is focused again on bioindustrial manufacturing innovation, education, and collaboration across the network and country. I'm joined here today by two of my colleagues, Dr. Amanda Rosenzweig at Delgado Community College. She is serving as co-principal investigator with me, and Haley Orndorff, who will talk in some detail about the curriculum developed so far. But this is a little bit about Biomade. Some of you may be familiar with the organization. I certainly encourage you to look us up. We have a beautiful website with lots of information, opportunities for membership, and how to get involved with us. But we were stood up. Our sponsor is the Department of Defense. We were stood up in April 2021. And again, some of the goals there aligning with our mission and vision for the Institute. Okay, so shifting toward the project here, we certainly have well-established, wonderful biotechnology programs across the country in our community colleges. We know that most of these programs have really been instructing students on how to enter, in particular, in biomedical careers, pharmaceutical careers, biopharmaceutical careers. And so with BioMade's existence, we're developing curriculum around engineering principles that some of these programs haven't seen yet, with respect to analysis, design, development. Scale up in particular is new often for instructors and students when it comes to bioindustrial manufacturing. And so these are the goals for the project as we seek to develop this curriculum. In the last 9 months since kickoff, we have put together a nice advisory committee for the project, very robust, primarily industry, which is always nice to have. It's critical that we hear from industry as far as the skills these students will need to enter into the sector. So we have accomplished goal 1. We have met as a committee 3 times since the inception of the project. We are currently working hard to develop modules that will really serve as plug and play modules. So everything you can think of, assessments, resources, tutorials, videos, will be part of these 8 modules. And we're hoping that we can create a lighter lift for current faculty to drop them into some existing courses they may have already at the college, with the idea of these modules being really having the student participate for 6 to 8 hours, 12 hours maybe on some of the learning. So as we move through the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about opportunities for engagement with community colleges across the country. And we will continue our deep dive here. Next slide. And I think maybe Amanda, you might be up.
Hello, everybody. As Louise said earlier, my name's Amanda Rosenzweig. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana at Delgado Community College, where I serve as the Assistant Dean for the School of STEM. And we are really excited about integrating new curriculum into our biotechnology and chemical technology program. So our program is called Science Lab Tech, and we have 2 concentrations, biotech and chemtech. And in our biotech program, we have 10 courses, and we believe 7 of them will fit the modules being dropped in for our teachers to incorporate these lessons. As chemtech, we have 6 classes that it will fit in very well. Louisiana, specifically the Gulf South, has a lot of companies moving in, as well as companies that are already there that do a lot of scale up, that are either introducing or are converting to a lot of bioindustrial manufacturing. And one of our industry partners that we work with really is emphasizing our students being exposed to specific skill sets that currently are not in our curriculum. So to ensure that our faculty are going to be prepared, one of our faculty members is traveling this summer to be trained in the curriculum, basically kind of a precursor to what we will begin training as a whole in summer of 2025, where all of our instructors will be trained. These instructors will incorporate the information into their courses as it fits. So we have a vision that Haley will talk about with the modules, where some of the modules will fit in every course. They're introduced to it in some of our lower level biotech and chemtech courses, and then it will be more of a module that students can go and reference as needed. And then there are modules that will be introduced in some of the higher level courses. We are working with companies that have informed us that some of the skill sets that they want, we are now going to be able to train our students in based on the modules that are being developed by the SMEs and the advisory commission and as well advisory committee, as well as Haley. Now, our instructors that are incorporating this, it is a pilot. So we know that there's going to be iterations over time that will, tweak, change, and we'll learn best practices as we go. One thing that we are excited about as a program is that we will be able to go to some of these industry companies and be able to do site visits and be exposed to equipment, especially stuff with scale up where we're not able to mimic that in the classroom, whether it's due to equipment constraints, time constraints, or financial constraints. We're really excited about these opportunities. Our faculty have been working with us for the past 9 months. They do come to all the advisory committee meetings just so they can be aware and be exposed. And then, of course, we are excited to get student and faculty feedback for how it will help them in the future with whether disseminating the information or with getting employment.
All right. Thanks so much, Amanda. As Louise said, I'm Haley Orndorff. I work at Biomed as a curriculum developer, and I'm focused right now on this project. So I will dig into the development and content of these proposed modules. So as Louise noted, our advisory committee, and Amanda as well, has been instrumental in providing guidance about where to prioritize our efforts. And summarized here are the takeaways from our committee about the skills technicians and operators need in bioindustrial manufacturing and ideas for structuring the modules to support that skill development. So first is this emphasis on the ability to work successfully in both the lab and plant floor. So for operators and technicians right now in the state of bioindustrial manufacturing, it would be incredibly beneficial if they can work successfully across these scales. So rather than a focus on just the lab and bench scale, also supporting learners and working successfully on the plant floor and exposure to the industrial scale. Second is a focus on operational experience. So providing learners with hands-on experience of these larger volumes than the traditional bench scale. Now, this is difficult to do, right, especially in small programs, but we are thinking creatively about effective models, as Amanda mentioned, pairing things with site visits. Even if you're not working with an actual large volume bioreactor or a disc stack centrifuge, there are ways to teach the skills of interacting with them safely and getting students just exposed to moving these larger volumes of liquids and thinking about process at industrial scale, and then connecting that conceptually to the real equipment that's out there. Finally, the specific topic emphases here range from process scale up through maintenance and troubleshooting, and that's what the following slides focus on, looking at each module in a bit more detail. Now, each module is targeted for about 6 to 12 hours of learner time. So that's what learners do outside of class and in class. We're designing them for synchronous implementation. And again, as Louise noted, the modules are designed to be discrete. So you can just use one in your program. Of course, they will be related. So they will have overlap. And we will be proposing a sequence, suggested one. But again, you can plug and play any one of them. So first up, we have product fermentation, again, working with scale up at multiple scales, so tube to tube, and then at a different point in the seed train, working from flask to reactor. Along with this is preparing media at multiple scales. At the smaller scale, this is covered effectively, but there are very different considerations for preparing and sterilizing media at industrial scale. Then alongside this is online sampling and monitoring. So identifying the process parameters, how they're controlled, what they need to be to support culture at different volumes. And then of course, cleaning and sterilizing fermentation equipment. So here we're looking at providing practice as much as possible with clean out of place procedures, clean in place, and then steam in place will have to be conceptual. But as much as possible, we're focusing on developing affordable models and ways to teach these skills in hands-on activities. For product separation and purification, we have a focus for the hands-on element for centrifugation and filtration, specifically disc stack centrifugation and tangential flow filtration. Our advisory committee noted that the majority of processes include these skills or these unit operations, so those would be best to focus on with a hands-on element. Conceptually, we'll have learners like applying and describing the other product-specific purification and separation methods. Sample collection and preparation. Again, heavily emphasized by our committee about the need for technicians and operators to be collecting samples sterilely. You're working with these huge volumes of your batch, so it's incredibly important that you don't introduce contamination when you're collecting a sample, and that you're collecting them and preparing them consistently. In this module also, we'll dig into batch records. So this is really important for technicians as they have real ownership over elements of the batch record. They're signing off for work that, is then used to investigate any problems and just sign off on, their ownership in the process, so supporting them in navigating that documentation. Our next set looks at analytics. So while technicians and operators are not going to be the ones out the gate performing all of these analytical chemistry methods, they are instrumental in, again, collecting and preparing the samples for analysis. So here we're focusing on what you're doing and why it's so important as a technician or operator in the analytical methods that assess product specifications, the quality, contamination. And at this level, folks do some level of analytics. So we're going to provide hands-on practice with OD spec, optical density spectrophotometer, and some other things that programs have on hand. But again, this will be contextualized to bioindustrial manufacturing. So we'll be working with fermentation broth and providing a deeper dive on some of the sources of error and how to mitigate them when you're working with those types of products. Instrumentation and process control, we're really excited to introduce some basic principles of process control. So supporting learners in looking at and analyzing a piping and instrumentation diagram and understanding what an industrial process entails. What are the controls and the instruments and how are they communicating with each other? So we have monitoring these online parameters again. So interpreting a control chart or a trend chart, being able to determine if a trend is believable, and then having enough knowledge to describe what you're seeing, interpreting the chart, describe it, and communicate appropriately. Again, to really take ownership of this role in maintaining the process. Finally, here we'll cover the basics to support learners' interaction with some of the organizational hardware and software. So that includes the programmable logic controllers and distributed control systems. Again, we have 6 to 12 hours of time, so we won't, get too far in, but supporting their basic interaction with these interfaces and understanding the foundational logic and what they would be doing on a day-to-day basis in interacting with these systems. Our last two then are maintenance and troubleshooting. So conducting preventative maintenance and troubleshooting safely in accordance with your organizational system. Of course, we cannot support students in troubleshooting every piece of equipment they might see on a plant floor. So our aim is to support them in developing troubleshooting strategies that work in industry. So, being able to describe normal operations of a process, identify deviations, describe them, triage, identify a challenge, determine if it's in your scope of work to remediate, and if it is, performing that. So we'll focus on really common troubleshooting tasks that technicians and operators do perform. And then for preventative maintenance, the same idea. So having them get practice with some of these PM skills and working with a preventative maintenance schedule, what elements of inventory are involved, and really the documentation around all of this is also incredibly critical. The last module, documentation and safety alongside communication and regulations. So we know this is covered really well in existing programs, but again, our committee was very passionate about these ideas and doing a module focused on these topics in bioindustrial manufacturing and doing them with really active learning approach. We are developing scenarios, right, where we are modeling what it means to work in a culture of safety. So having learners practice telling someone, hey, I think you forgot your PPE, or practicing what it feels like when someone reminds you of that. Practicing real communication skills. So how do you communicate to a colleague, to your supervisor in different modes and mediums? How do you handle shift exchanges alongside the documentation and regulations like SOPs? So yes, they should be able to describe what they are and how they're designed and different from a lab procedure, but we also want to support them in using some cognitive strategies to dissect them and really understand how this affects your work. How does an SOP connect to a batch record? How can you develop skills to not be overwhelmed by this information, to do your job effectively out on the plant floor and get over some of those difficult activation energy situations that technicians face when they're first exposed to all this, new information, regulations, and supporting them and seeing how it all works together. So that's a really high level look at the module content as it's proposed right now. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Louise to talk about ways you all could get involved. Maybe. Go.
Thank you, Haley. Excellent work thus far. So how can folks get involved? Certainly, we appreciate you being on the line with us today to hear a little bit about the project initially. We are hosting a first, and Amanda alluded to this, a first educator workshop here in the Bay Area in July. We are prioritizing Bay Area educators, but certainly if we have capacity, if we have room, we welcome you to apply for this opportunity to participate with us. Again, this will be a kind of a pilot. We really want educators attending this workshop to tell us, hey, this is not possible. There's no way we can do this. Maybe this works instead. So really a dynamic, interactive experience over 3 days. You can find information with respect to the application on our website, or you can ping me directly and I can help you out with a link. We will be, the three of us will be at High Tech in July, at the end of July in Kansas City. We will have an updated presentation for all of you. And also, again, returning to DC for the NSF/ATE PI conference with yet another updated presentation for you as we continue the work. Amanda alluded to this. We will have a workshop for educators across the country at Delgado down in New Orleans in summer 2025. I believe we'll be there in June. It will be a 3-day offering again. And for sure, we will invite folks again from across the country, not prioritizing those in California. So we welcome you to join us then. Currently, along with Delgado, we have Southeast Community College, Misty Welling and Tracy Nide. Some of you may know them. They are helping us out with some of these efforts initially, and it's been a great experience working with both of those faculty as well. So that is it for our presentation today. Again, we appreciate your showing up for us, and thank you very much. Turn it back over to Dion.
Thank you, Louise, Amanda, and Haley. At this time, we have about 20 minutes for a Q&A. So please raise your hand using the hand icon or just speak up, and we will do our best to answer you in order. And then we will also address the questions that are in the chat as well. So I tell you what, let's just go ahead and go straight to the chat. I know that some of the questions were already answered that related to our first presenters and their presentation. Christy, I know you had some questions that you asked. Did you want to elaborate on the I believe you mentioned the target audience, the alumni who are now in industry? Christine? Julie, you actually answered that.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So we at Johnston Community College, when we host events, we invite alumni as well as individuals that are not alumni. At this point, we're still building out our speed networking. And so it's just another reason or justification for this grant is to build up the alumni network. So without individuals who were not alumni, we would probably not have enough attendees on the volunteer side.
And just to add on that from City College's standpoint, when we started this, we just started with industry. We actually weren't thinking so much about alumni and then realized, oh, it was a way alumni could come in. And actually moving the events to becoming virtual meant that they were easy and fast enough to replicate that we could do 2 a semester. So then we started doing 1 that was alumni early on, because that really gave students a chance to talk to people that I think they felt even less worried about talking to. So we would do 1 event that was specifically them talking to alumni early in the semester, and then later on talking to industry professionals and alumni, kind of just a more broad range. And then that's kind of why we asked those questions that Julie was showing the data, right? Like, how important really was it for them to meet alumni versus like, is it meeting people with identities that match their own? And it is really interesting how, especially for people who report as being from identities that are historically excluded from the sciences, that meeting with the alum is like 94% of them said it was very important. Versus, I think it was still in the 80s for people, right, who have a similar identity to them, but the alumni, basically, I think we want to make sure these events seem to be extremely positive, irregardless of how you do them. But there are additional benefits if you can bring in alumni as well. So we just don't want people to be like, I don't have alumni, so I'm not going to do it. I still really think it's important, hopefully, to do it. Oh, Christine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was on mute before and I couldn't figure out how to get unmuted. So I just wanted to let you know that at Pfizer we did something very similar last year, but we called it a mentoring event. So we invited some local students with disabilities from the New York area to come on site. And it was all day. First, we started off with a keynote speaker who had a disability herself. And then we took them in and we went through, we had them go through like group activities where each one of those groups had one of our executive leadership team were there with them to listen and just have a discussion on a little bit about the company. And then we went into, it was like maybe 15 minutes with members of our diversity, equity, and inclusion team, members of our recruitment team, hiring managers. We had a line of them, and then we just went through with our attendees to go over their resume, provide some suggestions. But it was so well received, and even now, over a year later, I'm still communicating with them. We haven't yet identified jobs for them yet because some of them were still students, but it was really impactful for everybody. I'm bummed that we couldn't do it this year because of budget issues at the company. But I'm very, I'm open to, participating or as an industry professional if you'll have me. So.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Christine. I think those types of events, especially when students can meet directly with individuals, are so impactful. And I think I guess my goal, we have a whole team and we all have different things we're really interested in, but my goal for this is to make it as sustainable and simple as possible, that everybody will start considering how to do it. And just think, this is a class I have in my program and I will just do this because I really think it's important that my students have a network before I leave. So we hope if you're interested in that, the one thing we didn't talk about was how much more effective this is for us, at least doing it, is when it's aligned with a class. It's just much easier to get the whole thing running. So it is finding a class in which you could do that. It would be our top suggestion, but sometimes that can't happen. And we do ones outside of class as well.
Yeah,
I think Lori.
How I can help.
Okay. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy. Lori
problem.
asked a question about do we share any of the do's or don'ts? We do have a few of those, yes, in the guidelines in the FAQ. And one of those is, as Karen just mentioned, making sure that you have space in a class to hold the event, encouraging instructors to provide some incentive or an attendance grade or something in return for attending the event.
Yeah, and I know there was a question about whether we do this with like biology students and chemistry students, like not just biotech. And I will say most of our data right now is from biotech students, and it seems to be really great. But we want to know if this actually useful. Like if we're trying to do recruitment's from outside of our programs, not inside, right? So we are trying right now to do this with an intro bio class. And it's actually, I'm working with somebody who's doing an in-person intro bio class. So he's allowing me to come in for 2 class sessions, but it's going to be virtual. One to get them learn about biotech in just a short presentation and get used to the virtual interface. And then the next class, we're going to do the speed networking. And we did this last semester and it was quite successful. So if you have, especially if like super intro bio classes where like biotech, they're going to do 1 or 2 classes, like I'm basically just taking over the class for a couple of days to see how this works. And last time, the results are not as like overwhelmingly positive. We share that data at a future time, but it's still very positive overall. But this is like intro bio. Like the students may never take another science class again, intro bio.
I want to add too, we do provide the students with a list of questions they can ask. And we also provide like how to prepare for a speed networking event email, which includes a link to an elevator pitch guidelines, a link to a thank you, a link to the bios from all of the volunteers that are attending. And then of course, the questions that students are not required to ask the questions that we provide. It's just in case they are interested in asking the questions. Or need some assistance identifying questions to ask.
And that hits on one other question I know that was asked, and then we'll be quiet because there should be questions. But it's just that we've tried to develop in our guidelines templates for everything we do. So you can just go in, copy that template, change it a little bit, and send it out. We want to make this, again, as easy as possible.
Do you all have a minimum number of students that you try to target when you're planning?
Yeah, I would say like for me, ideally 12 or more. I mean, more is better, but if it starts getting below 10, Cassandra, and we have run some events, but you know, then it's just return on investment of your time and what else that you're doing, which is why, again, running it with a class is really beneficial. You can even run it in a class and then ask other faculty to give their students extra credit for coming to it, right? Maybe they write like a little tiny description of who they met, something like that, so that you can bump up numbers. And we also had that one question about like, what's the biggest complaint? Like and it is what Cassandra said, is they always want more time. Everybody wants more time. And we're like, that word, you saw speed networking. Like they all want to meet for like half an hour. And we're like, then you're going to meet with nobody. Anyways, so we have on top of that in the preparing, we have information on how they can do the thank you note afterwards and how they can then follow up for an informational interview, which is what it should be, right? It's the starting point, not the end.
Yeah, so I had a question for you, Ken. It was about that communication up front. I mean, it made clear to those participants that it's only 15 minutes. And
Yes.
so if that's the kind of feedback you get, then it seems like, I'm not sure. It just seemed like that maybe they had a different idea of what to expect, but speed networking is just that. So, you know, maybe there might be some, you know, more rigid guidelines for those participants in terms of what to talk about, how to create their own elevator pitches.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Yeah, I mean, maybe that we're not signaling hard enough. It is in the title and we outline it. It's not like everybody's saying that, it's just a few, but I think people get really excited about someone they meet with and then they don't want to stop talking. But yeah, so, but the other thing on the other side is or the way I see this is that I'm not a matchmaker. And I really want to make sure that students get to meet enough people that they'll find somebody that they connect with. And so I would hate to break it down to like only the meeting with 2 people or 3 people, because if they don't meet those a couple additionals, they may not really find that connection that they're looking for. But I totally recognize, thank you, Christine. Yeah, being clear about what to expect. We try, but we could definitely add in more.
Well, I put that question in the chat about what contributed to that lower rating for excellent, and the only reason I was given in there was the fact that they wanted more time to talk, which if that's the only reason that was given, then it seemed maybe that feedback to the participant that you know, I want to understand more about why you, it may sound picky, but it's better to just understand of the other deep-rooted issues that might be there instead of just, oh, they wanted more time to talk, right? It just
Yeah.
seems, I don't know.
It's not the only thing that comes up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the predominant one, but you're right. And it's something we could actually ask our evaluators to look more closely, because those are open-ended questions as to why they answered it that way, and to look more in depth at the responses that come back from that.
Questions, right? Okay, I didn't know how they would develop it. I was going to ask if you could share the questions, but that's okay. It's not important, but it's more of how the participant was responding.
Definitely. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Thank you for that, for
Thank you.
Christine. Daryl, I don't know if the question's for us.
Well, it's the question for kind of anyone who's having these open sessions with industry partners and with the students and the folks showing up in the room. I'm just curious if the engineering aspects are being brought into, or the engineers from the advisory folks are coming in and speaking with students, because when students are coming in, they're thinking about so many different things, and it could be a focus on biotech to start, but they are, a lot of them say they want to be engineers, and that's probably a good time to have them meet with someone who's a biochemical engineer or chemical engineer that's in that industry space. I'm just curious if those other peripheral, we're focusing on biotech and biotechnicians that go into bioindustrial manufacturing, those folks who are technicians, 2-year degrees. But a percentage of these students are saying that they want to be engineers, and so also saying that they want to be doctors, right? They're majoring in biology, they want to be doctors, that kind of thing. So are those potential needs being addressed in this space, or is the focus purely biotechnicians?
For us at City College, it's a broad range of people from different parts of biotech. So it's academe as well as industry. There have been occasionally people at engineer positions, although it's not something I think we've recruited specifically for. We definitely haven't recruited for doctors. That kind of is, I feel like it's outside of the scope of our grant. And but I think it is an excellent opportunity if you know what it is that your students are looking for, then you can outreach to those populations and bring them in. And sometimes students, I don't know, many times in my career, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for either, right? So we also sometimes have people that are more in business development come in and different aspects, just because, again, you never know what you don't know. So I think it's an excellent point of trying to, and also thinking about then when we set them up, sort of, are they meeting with, if we have a group, like they're meeting with someone from academe, they're meeting with somebody, right, who's entry level, they're meeting with somebody who's maybe even closer to the C-suite. So they get to sort of, like, there's so much diversity in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a second follow-up question, just really, in typical manufacturing, big industrial manufacturing opportunity, it is those are male-dominated roles. Are there a focus on bringing in more women into these particular roles in bioindustrial manufacturing, dealing with large pieces of equipment, et cetera?
Yeah, Julie, if that's more, we don't, in the San Francisco Bay Area, we don't have as much, at least for City College of San Francisco, it's not as much like large industrial scale biomanufacturing. We do usually have a very even gender ratio, but not specifically for that area. Julie?
I think Louise was going to answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, Daryl, we make every effort to, establishing inclusivity, and we want to recruit all, folks from all different kinds of backgrounds. But yes, I acknowledge that in particular, bioindustrial manufacturing, it's been fairly male dominated. But the exciting piece is that Amanda, Haley, Golnar, myself, we're all on fire. Sarah Cohen, my colleagues here, we're all on fire to get women to participate more and to certainly make these opportunities available and expose students that are typically, underserved with these opportunities. This is one project, kind of that Biomade is heading up through the National Science Foundation. Certainly, and Daryl, I know you're more familiar with Biomade doing so much more with other efforts with education and workforce development, again, including really reaching out to people who haven't, had the opportunity yet to participate. So thank you for the question, Daryl.
And Amanda, you mentioned contextualizing the curriculum. Do you feel that in doing so, it has increased a lot more interest and retention in the programs?
So I can't speak for the bioindustrial manufacturing yet because it hasn't been implemented yet, but we do have very close relationships with our industry. So our students are actually very fortunate that they get to go to sites and work at the site during class time also. So they do get a lot of exposure and real life experience, which helps not only them stay in the program and interested, it helps with retention, and attrition. But we've been really fortunate. We have 100% placement rate. So we are doing something right, even if we can't pinpoint it yet.
Very good. And I want to also take your attention to the chat because there are some links in the chat box that both Karen and I believe Julie, you put some links there. For additional information on each of these ATE projects, you can go to the innovatebio.org website. And again, I encourage you to copy down those links that are there. We also have the link Cassandra put in the chat, the link to our survey. We would appreciate you completing that as well. That will help us in preparing future ATE talks and events that we have planned. If there are no other questions, oh, I'm sorry, let's see. Yeah, and there's Amanda, you put your email in the chat. If there are no other questions or comments, I just would like to thank you all again. Special thanks to all of our presenters for taking your time today to share your projects. And again, for our last ATE project talk next Friday, you can go to the innovatebio.org website. That's also in the chat. And please complete our survey. We wish everyone has a peaceful and happy weekend. And we'll see you next week.